Immortality is a scam. I mean this with total sincerity. You spend 20 levels of adventuring risking your frail wizard body, right? You finally get your grubby little hands on 9th level spells. You can bend the very fabric of reality to your whim, shape the cosmos, call down meteors from the sky, and then what? You trip down some cobblestone stairs on a rainy Tuesday and break your hip because your constitution is still an 8. So, what do? You look into life extension. Elves just get to live for centuries by default, which is yet another reason to either love them or hate them with the burning passion of 1,000 suns, depending on your personal vibe. But humans and other short-lived folk have to resort to extreme measures. Cloning is incredibly expensive and annoying to set up. Vampirism means you can never go to the beach again, and you have to deal with the whole sunlight turning you into a pile of ash thing. And then there's Lichdom, the absolute pinnacle of arcane ambition. You rip your own soul out of your body, shove it into a shiny little box, and decide that the absolute best way to spend eternity is as a dusty, calcium-deficient skeleton hiding in a subterranean basement. Today, we're looking at the biology, or lack thereof, and the sheer bureaucratic nightmare of becoming and existing as a lich in Dungeons and Dragons. Because if there is one thing wizards love more than casting fireball into a small room and blowing up their own frontliners, it's making terrible, irreversible long-term life decisions. Let's talk about the process, because it's not like you just wake up one morning, stretch, and decide to be a lich today. It's a grueling, ethically bankrupt marathon of dark magic. To even begin the process, you have to be an incredibly powerful spellcaster. We're talking minimum ability to cast 9th level spells in most lore, or at least close enough to it that you are essentially a walking demigod of the arcane arts. You also have to be evil. And I don't mean just, I don't tip the barmaid at the local tavern evil. I mean, I will casually slaughter an entire village of innocent farmers just to power my favorite reading lamp evil. Becoming a lich requires the crafting of a phylactery, which is essentially a metaphysical hard drive for your immortal soul. Now, a phylactery can be basically anything, but it usually takes the form of a small metal box containing strips of parchment with magical, unholy phrases written on them. But you can make it an amulet, a ring, whatever fancy trinket strikes your fancy. The catch is that making this thing costs an absolute fortune. We are talking hundreds of thousands of gold pieces, meaning your scholarly wizard has to moonlight as an aggressive venture capitalist or a warlord just to fund their own undead retirement plan. And once you have the box, you have the money, and you have the raw magical power, you have to brew the potion of transformation. This potion is the worst cocktail in existence. It makes a pangalactic gargle blaster look like a mild cup of tea. It involves venom from wyverns, the blood of an innocent creature like a dead baby or a unicorn, arsenic, belladonna, and usually the heart of a humanoid sacrificed specifically for this brew. You take all of this, mix it up, and you drink this noxious sludge under a full moon. And then it kills you. Horribly. It stops your heart, rots your flesh, and violently forces your soul out of your physical body and into the phylactery. And here is the absolute kicker, the funniest part of this whole ordeal: it's a gamble. If you mess up the brewing process by a single drop, or your arcane math was slightly off, or you just have phenomenally bad luck, you don't become a lich. You just die. You drink poison and you expire on the floor of your lab. And because your soul is tainted with some of the foulest necromancy ever conceived in the history of the multiverse, you probably get fast-tracked straight to the deepest, most miserable pits of the 9 hells. Do not pass go, do not collect 200 gold. Your soul is now currency for a pit fiend, but let's say you succeed. Congratulations, you absolute psychopath. You are now a lich. You wake up, your skin is slowly sloughing off your bones, your eyes rot away to be replaced by glowing pinpricks of baleful light, and you no longer have a functioning digestive system or respiratory system. This is where the grim reality of lichdom truly sets in, and why I firmly believe it is the most pathetic way to live forever. What do you actually do now? You can't enjoy a good meal. You can't enjoy physical touch. You can't go down to the local pub and flex your magical might to impress the locals because the moment you step outside, an entire battalion of paladins will immediately try to smite you into a fine white powder. So, you lock yourself in a tomb. You surround yourself with spike pits, poison gas, and mindless undead servants who can't even hold a decent conversation, and you read books. For centuries. And the worst part is, the rent is always due. You see, your phylactery isn't a one-and-done deal. It's not a passive battery. To maintain your undead form and keep your physical body from crumbling into a useless pile of dust, you have to actively feed the phylactery. And it doesn't run on AA batteries, it runs on souls. You have to actively go out, or have your minions go out, and kidnap living, breathing, sentient creatures. You drag them down to your musty basement, cast the imprisonment spell on them, and trap their soul inside your phylactery. Over the course of about a day, the phylactery slowly digests their soul, destroying it utterly. No afterlife for them, just pure, miserable non-existence. This sustains you for a while. But eventually, the hunger comes back. You are essentially trapped in an eternal, unending cycle of soul tax evasion. You went through all of this effort to be free of mortal constraints, and you just ended up giving yourself the most stressful cosmic mortgage possible. If you fail to feed your phylactery, things go very bad very quickly. This brings us to the Demilich. Now, you might hear the word Demilich and think it's a half-lich or a lesser lich. No, Bozo. A Demilich is what happens when a lich forgets to eat their magical Wheaties. Over centuries, a lich might become so utterly obsessed with traveling the multiverse astrally, or reading a really long, incredibly dry book series on arcane theory, that they literally forget to maintain their physical body and feed their phylactery. Their bones just turn to dust, leaving only their skull behind. But because they are fueled by ancient, concentrated spite and magical energy, they don't just die. The skull gets covered in precious gems, replacing the teeth and eyes, and it floats around screaming at people, and I mean screaming. The Demilich is notorious for its howl ability, which simply tells anyone nearby who isn't incredibly durable to instantly drop dead. They don't cast traditional spells anymore because they don't have hands to perform somatic components, and they don't have vocal cords for verbal components. They just aggressively absorb souls into their gem teeth and float around being a supreme nuisance. It's the magical equivalent of becoming a highly lethal Roomba. It just wanders around your crypt bumping into walls and instantly killing any rogue that fails a constitution saving throw. Let's jingle some keys in front of your face really quick and talk about mechanics, because fighting a lich is an experience every DD player dreads, and for good reason. On paper, a lich is a challenge rating 21 creature. But if you look at their base stats, they are surprisingly squishy for something that high up the food chain. They have an armor class of 17 and about 135 hit points. I have seen level 8 barbarians with more health than that. If a fighter with an action surge manages to walk up to a lich and swing a magical sword 4 times, the lich is going to turn into bone meal in about 6 seconds flat. But a lich is entirely aware of this. A lich is an intelligence 20 super genius who has had 500 years to prepare for your specific arrival. A lich shouldn't be sitting in an empty 30 by 30-foot room waiting to be punched in the face. A lich will have a dozen glyphs of warding cast on the floor. A lich will have the shield spell ready, contingency spells precast, and magical terrain that drops your melee fighters into pits of bubbling acid. And when it comes to offense, they are absolutely brutal. They have a paralyzing touch that deals cold damage and completely immobilizes you on a failed save. And since they are undead, they don't get tired. Oh, and they have power word kill. The ultimate middle finger spell. If you have less than 100 hit points, the lich just points a bony finger at you, says the word die, and you just die. No saving throw. No dramatic last words to your party members. You just fall over like a sack of potatoes. That's the kind of spiteful, toxic energy we're dealing with here. But wait, there's more. Let's say you actually manage to beat the Lich. You bypass the traps, you survive the power word kill, your paladin smites the absolute god out of the skeleton, and it shatters into a million pieces. You win, right? Wrong. The Phylactery is still out there. Unless you find that box and destroy it, the Lich's soul just casually retreats to it. In 1d10 days, the Lich forms a brand new body right next to the Phylactery, completely healthy, completely pissed off, and perfectly aware of exactly who you are, what combat tactics you use, and where you sleep at night. You haven't won a boss fight, you've just initiated a terrifying, high-stakes game of hide-and-seek with an immortal magical terrorist who holds a massive grudge. If you want to permanently kill a Lich, you have to destroy the Phylactery. And DMs, please, for the love of Corellon Larethian, do not just leave the Phylactery in a wooden chest next to the Lich's desk. That defeats the entire purpose of being a super genius. A proper Lich will hide their Phylactery in the bottom of the ocean, or buried in a lead-lined vault on the elemental plane of fire, or disguised as a random cobblestone in the middle of a bustling city street. The quest isn't killing the Lich, the quest is finding the one rock out of a million that happens to contain the soul of a furious wizard. Now, the standard humanoid Lich isn't the only flavor of undead spellcaster on the menu. We have variations, because of course we do. The most famous, or perhaps infamous, is the Dracolich. Because you know what the world really needed? An ancient red dragon that also has the magical invulnerability of a Lich. Dragons are already vain, incredibly arrogant creatures that hoard wealth and sit on it for centuries doing absolutely nothing. Some dragons decide that living for 1,000 years isn't enough, so they team up with an evil cult to undergo their own specialized version of the Lich ritual. The result is a skeletal or zombified dragon that retains all of its breath weapons, all of its flight, and all of its terrifying presence, but is now immune to half the damage types in the game and comes back to life if you kill it. The only real downside for the dragon is that their Phylactery works a bit differently. If a Dracolich dies, its spirit retreats to its gem, but it needs a reptilian corpse to possess in order to come back. Which usually means the cult has to lug around a spare dragon corpse, or the Dracolich just possesses a really unlucky iguana or a crocodile until it can find a proper upgrade. It's a hilarious mental image of a supreme ancient terror being trapped in the body of a swamp gecko, but God help you when it finally gets a real body back. There's also the Baelnorn. This is the Elven version of a Lich, and frankly, I find them highly offensive. Remember how I said the process of becoming a Lich involves horrific evil, child sacrifice, and a complete rejection of the natural order? Well, the elves, in their infinite, insufferable perfection, have a good version. A Baelnorn is an elven caster who becomes an undead Lich purely out of a noble sense of duty to protect their family or a sacred site. They are given this gift by the elven gods, they don't have to eat souls to survive, and they just get to hang out being glowing, sad, slightly transparent guardians of elven history. It completely undercuts the horror of Lichdom. It's basically the elven god saying, yes, necromancy is an abomination against nature, unless we do it, in which case it's actually beautiful and heroic. This is why nobody likes elves. The sheer hypocrisy of it all is staggering. My god, elves just get everything handed to them, don't they? Let's look at some of the most famous Liches in the lore, because they set the gold standard for how awful these things are. Acererak is the poster child for Lichdom. This guy doesn't even want to conquer the world. He's way beyond that petty mortal ambition. He just travels the multiverse building elaborate, inescapable tombs designed specifically to brutally murder adventurers because he finds it funny. The Tomb of Horrors is his magnum opus. It's not a lair meant to be lived in, it's a giant, magical meat grinder meant to filter out the weak and farm the souls of the strong to feed his Phylactery. He is the ultimate troll. He literally builds fake entrances that just crush you with a block of stone, and puts a sphere of annihilation in the mouth of a statue just to see if your rogue is dumb enough to stick their hand inside. And they always are. And then we have Vecna. The guy who became a Lich, then managed to become a literal god, and famously lost his eye and his hand along the way. His body parts are now some of the most powerful artifacts in the game. People just casually chop off their own healthy limbs to attach his rotting, evil body parts to themselves for a stat boost. The sheer unhinged behavior of DD players when presented with a powerful artifact is astounding. You give a player a sword that does extra fire damage but whispers evil thoughts, and they will immediately sell their mother to keep it. Vecna knows this. Vecna relies on this. He is the patron saint of secrets and terrible bargains. Let's talk about the psychological toll of Lichdom for a second. Because it has to be immense. You are a creature of pure mind, trapped in a rotting, unfeeling cage. You don't sleep. You don't dream. You don't feel the warmth of the sun or the taste of fine wine. Everything that makes mortal life bearable is stripped away entirely, leaving only your ambition, your towering intellect, and an echoing, infinite void of time. It's no wonder they all eventually go insane. If I had to sit in a subterranean cave for 300 years with nothing to do but read the same dusty tomes and occasionally murder a peasant to pay my soul taxes, I would start devising convoluted dungeons filled with gelatinous cubes, too. It's an eternity of profound, crushing boredom masked as ultimate power. And they don't even have friends. Mind flayers have their neat little colony and their elder brain pool. Vampires have their spawn and their dramatic, Gothic court politics where they sip blood out of goblets. Liches have absolutely nothing. They are the ultimate lone wolves of the villain world. If you encounter two liches hanging out together, it's either an elaborate illusion, or they are currently in the exact middle of trying to backstab each other to steal the other's magical research. They are completely incapable of trust, because they are hyper-aware that every other powerful entity in the multiverse wants their stuff. They are paranoid hermits hoarding arcane weapons of mass destruction. So how do you actually run a lich in a campaign without it just being a large bag of hit points that casts spells? You make them the puppet master. The party shouldn't even see the lich until the final act of a multi-year campaign. The lich is the guy secretly funding the bandit king. The lich is the one who whispered into the ear of the corrupt noble. The lich has layered their defenses so perfectly that by the time the players actually step into the tomb, they should feel like they are walking into a meat grinder designed by a sadistic architect who has factored in their exact party composition. The environment itself should fight the players. Anti-magic fields in the hallways. Illusions of the floor being safe when it's actually a pit of poisoned spikes. Mind-controlled loved ones forced to fight the party to drain their resources. A lich doesn't fight fair because a lich didn't spend a lifetime studying the arcane arts just to get into an honorable fistfight with a guy wielding a sharp piece of metal. Make the party earn that victory in blood and tears. And then, when they do finally win, when the dust settles and they think they've saved the world, hit them with the realization that the phylactery is missing. That look of absolute dread on your players' faces is exactly what being a DM is all about. It is the purest form of joy you can experience behind the screen. In conclusion, Lichdom is a scam. It's a cosmic pyramid scheme invented by dark gods to trick incredibly smart, arrogant people into turning themselves into miserable, isolated batteries. It's the ultimate sunken cost fallacy. You put in the work, you ruin your soul, and your reward is an eternity of paperwork and hiding. But from a narrative standpoint, they are absolutely top-tier villains. They are the arrogant, untouchable geniuses of the DD universe, and tearing down their smug, fleshless faces is one of the most intensely satisfying things a group of players can do. Just remember to pack extra counterspells. Because nothing hurts more than getting hit by a 9th level spell right as you open the boss room door. Anyway, that's enough ranting about skeletal nerds with god complexes for one day. If you want to see more content where I complain about the terrible life choices of fictional monsters, do the whole liking and subscribing thing. Or don't. Your life, your choices. I'm not a cop. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and for the love of all that is holy, don't pick up glowing amulets you find in dusty crypts. Have a good one.